6. Nehemiah chapter 6. All right. So with all the craziness that we got so far from the book of Samuel, we go over all of it. We'd be here all night talking about all the craziness that we've seen up to the book of Samuel. And just the wonderful works of God. I say craziness just because it's just, just really neat, wild stories that some people would only dream of being able to live, And the sweet part about it all is how God just worked for every single one of them. So if you remember with Samuel, now Samuel's in the ministry. He's full-fledged. He's rocking it. The Philistines come in and they attack. They attack one of the cities. Kill most of the soldiers in that city. So the city, looking for some sort of deliverance, asks for the Ark of the Covenant to be brought to them, which the two boys, the scripture doesn't say one way or the other whether or not they really were allowed to do this, or should have, but they took the Ark of the Covenant, take it down to that city. The Philistines, amazingly so, are the ones who are like, oh my gosh, they brought down the Ark of the Covenant, God's with them. Man, remember, and they started telling all of the works of God, which is amazing to me, that they believed it even more so. But nonetheless, they ended up attacking anyways. They ended up pushing through. They ended up attacking. They ended up taking the Ark of the Covenant. They take it back to the first town. I believe that was Ashdod. I'm not sure if I got that one right. But there was the 5 different cities that bring it in. Each time they bring it into one of the cities, all of the people of that city would get hemorrhoids. And so they would get to a point to where everybody in the city did not want to have that Ark of the Covenant anymore. So they called all of the leaders of the Philistines together. And the Philistine leaders said, well, let's move it over to this other city. So they move it over to the next city. Well, by the time it gets to like the 4th city, when they see them coming with the Ark of the Covenant, they start hollering out, do not bring it here, do not bring it here. Nonetheless, they did. And so all the 5 cities get the hemorrhoids, the 5 different cities of them. All get the hemorrhoids. But if you remember their God, they put it in front of, which one was it? This is the name. Was it Dagon? Dagon. They put the ark in front of that God, kind of showing off like, man, our God helped us win this, right? And then every night they would go to sleep, they'd wake up the next morning, and their God would be laying face flat, worshiping the Ark of the Covenant. And they would come back and they'd pick it back up, and the next day the same thing would happen. And so when they didn't catch that, that's when the hemorrhoid thing came. Because when they didn't see, couldn't understand, couldn't catch it. And if you remember on the last one, when the God Dagon fell, his hands broke and his head broke. And I do believe that there's spiritual significance in that by that in power-wise he had none. And knowledge, speaking, all the things that encompass who God really is, the attributes of God, he did not have it. And so he lost his hands, lost his head. So that's when that's when the hemorrhoids come and then the movement of the ark. So when we came down, into chapter 6, so the Philistines themselves called the priests and the diviners their own priests and diviners, and they asked them, then what should we do with this? And so it's really neat. I really am impressed with their wise men and how they really go at this. They say, you know what, if you send it away to Israel, they said, you better not send it empty-handed. Like, you need to give it back to them. Because they said, what do we do with this thing? They're like, well, you need to give it back to them. That's the only way to get rid of this. And but do not send it empty. So this is verse 3 of chapter 6. Do not send it empty. He says, then, but by all means return it to him with a trespass offering. Okay, so we crossed the line that we should not have crossed. We're sending them this offering. He says, then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand is not removed from him. And then he goes on and says, what is the trespass offering which we shall give to him? And he says, well, 5 golden tumors to represent the 5 cities that have all of the hemorrhoids, and then 5 golden rats to represent the 5 leaders. And so they said, and because the same plague was on all of you and on all lords. He goes on, he says, therefore you shall make images of the tumors, images of the rats that ravage the land, and you shall give glory to the God of Israel. So if you really want this to end, you need to send this back with these offerings, and then you need to give glory to God and the God of the church of Israel. Yes? He says, and then perhaps he will lighten his hand. And I like how they like if you do all these things, then maybe he might not be as harsh on you, but he's probably not going to just not be harsh on you at all. I'm sorry, I thought that was funny. Then he goes on, he warns them, he says, hey, listen, don't be like those of the pharaohs. And again, it's amazing. They're priests knowing the stories of all the wonderful works of God, and they start declaring those wonderful works. Yes? And they go over how about the Egyptians, the pharaohs, and then he says, man, and they even knew of the hardening of Pharaoh's heart, and how Pharaoh, like they knew that whole entire story. Does that make sense? Like, that's amazing that everybody would know this, and you're talking about like a long time since that takes place to this point right now. You're talking about multiple generations. Yeah. And we are, which is great evidence of what God says, which is that His word abides and abides always. And it will abide, and it's one of the things that will actually still be when everything else ain't. It will still be God's word, yes? And even those who He would look and who were, they were lost. Even they, unfortunately, came through the consequences of some of these other things, but then they became aware and even testified themselves of the works of God, which is just amazing. So they end up going through, okay, you make this new cart, you put 2 milk cows that have never, ever done anything before outside of just being a milk cow, right? And you take these calves and you go lock them away. The cows won't know what to do, but you hitch them to the cart, and if they go back and they take all the goods back, then we know that it was their God. Yes? And if the cows don't know what to do, they just stand there, then we know that this is just chance, that this is all happening. Right? So they hook up the cows, they put the offering on there, they put the ark on there, they send it back. So that's where we were at last week. So the men did so, verse 10. Then the men did so. They took 2 milk cows, they hitched it to the cart, and they shut up their calves at home. They set the ark of the Lord on the cart, the chest of the gold rats, and the images of the tumors. Then the cows headed straight for the road to Beth Shemesh, and went along the highway, blowing as they went. And they did not turn aside to the right or to the left. And the lords of Philistines went after them to the border of Beth Shemesh. So the 5 lords of the Philistines followed, making sure. Yes? And the cows never varied one way or the other, which again would not be completely normal for a cow that has not used to be hooked to a cart. Okay? Yeah, for these cows, like these cows are not used to that, and yet at the same time they're acting like that's what they've always done. And they just head straight down the road, they don't move to the left, right, and they don't stop, which is another thing. Cows, when they see something that they like and they think it might be yummy, they stop. Yeah, and they block things and things like that, and that's part of their nature. That's why you actually have to herd them and drive them, right? Here, there is no herding, there is no driving, they're just doing it. Now the people of Beth Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they lifted up their eyes, and they saw the ark, and they rejoiced for seeing it. Then the cart came to the field of Joshua in Beth Shemesh, and they stood there. And a large stone was there, and they split the wood of the cart, and they offered one of the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. And then the Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the chest that was in it, in which were the articles of gold, and they put them on the large stone. Then the men of Beth Shemesh offered burnt offerings, and they made sacrifices the same day to the Lord. So when the 5 lords of the Philistines seen this, then they returned to Ekron to the same day. These are the golden tumors which the Philistines returned as a trespass offering to the lords. 1 for Ashdod, 1 for Gaza, 1 for Ashkelon, 1 for Gath, and 1 for Ekron. And the golden rats according to the number of all the cities of the Philistines belonging to the 5 lords, both fortified cities and country villages, as far as the large stone of Abel, on which they set the ark of the Lord, which the stone remains to this day in the field of Joshua of Beth Shemesh. Then he struck the men. So this is like, that kind of ends like that happened, yes? So then he kind of comes in with this other little part here. He says, then he struck the men of Beth-Shemesh because they looked into the ark of the Lord. So he struck 50,070 men of the people, and the people lamented because the Lord had struck the people with a great slaughter. So, I don't know if you were able to follow that all. So, the cows take off, the 5 guys who follow them, they follow them all the way down to Beth-Shemesh, which is the beginning of the territory now of Israel. Okay? Goes into the field of Joshua and into that territory, crosses the river into what was Israel then, at that moment, right? When they see that, they take off and leave. When the people that are working out in the fields look up and see the ark, they rejoice. Yes? They call the Levites down, which is what you were to do, because the Levites were the priests, to come down, and they were the only ones that should handle the Ark of the Covenant. And they take the ark off of the cart, in which the cart they were chopping up as wood to make a burnt offering unto the Lord. Yes? So immediately, they're back to the sacrifice, which is the representation of Christ. Right? Okay, and that part is beautiful, right? But then all of a sudden, it moves to this other little part here, and it says, then he struck the men of Beth-Shemesh because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. So he struck 50,070 men. So those would be Israelites of Beth-Shemesh, because they looked into the ark of the covenant. So the question I want to ask is everybody with me so far? You understand what's taking place, yes? So the question I have for you is why?
Mine says putting 70 to death.
Okay.
I guess it doesn't matter.
Mine says 10,070.
50,070 men. So that's a lot. I'm sorry, Clint, that you're Debbie's like, no, I'm not getting my copy.
The one, the New International from here.
Yeah, the New International versions, I'm sorry guys, but that's what we had. That's what was donated to us. We have them.
Yeah.
So we put them out there. It's not the best translation in the entire world, in my opinion. But that's neither here nor there. At the end of the day, you'll still find Christ. So the question still remains, these people died because they looked at the Ark of the Covenant. Why? Because the number at the end of the day it's not really the most important thing. However, the 50,070, I mean, that is a great number. Yes? But the reason why is what's important, not the number. So, okay, but okay, they weren't to be looking in it. So, okay.
Because it showed the lack of faith.
Okay, explain.
Well,
It's easy to make a comment, but explain why. Because she said, well, because they weren't believing. That's true, but why is that true? Like, you know, every comment that everybody made is true in and of itself, but the reason why still has not been explained. And that's what I'm asking you to think through.
well, because I guess I'm thinking with God, it's faith, the unseen reality, and when you're sitting here trying to find proof,
Okay?
it would kind of, that.
So yeah, faith in the unseen reality, right? And what is our faith in then? If I guess that no matter how I say that, that gets really confusing because there's a lot of different answers that you could throw into that. Okay, it's based off the words of God, though, right? It's faith in the words of God, right? What is the Ark of the Covenant? You guys, like, I went over this before, but just in case you forgot. Okay. I heard, I'm sorry guys, I heard God, but
Represent the presence of God.
represent the presence of God, okay? And so like there was other things like the smoke, right? But what was the ark itself? Do you know what the ark itself was really supposed to represent? And then in that, what would be the contents thereof? So it is, like she said, the presence of God, and like more than just the presence of God, but God. Right? Like the representation of the Ark of the Covenant was the Ark of the Promise, right? And what's in the promise? Sorry, Rudy. You're going to just read that to what is the promise of God? Okay? You say Jesus, but you have to go over the reason why Jesus is necessary in order to get to that part of the promise, because there is a reason why Jesus is the promise. Okay, Monique's on it right here. Okay, I'm sorry, somebody else might have been, but I could actually hear a little bit of what Monique said, and I heard the one word that is on it. So like, Monique loudly. Because we are condemned to hell. Why? Because we are unholy. And what is God? And when you say unholy, it means that we're not complete. We're not perfect, we're not complete. But who is? And because God is, guess what we cannot do?
Look upon him.
We can't even get to him, we can't look upon him, we can have nothing to do with him, he can have nothing to do with us. Because we're sinners. Right? So there is no hope of getting anywhere close to God without what? Without Jesus, right? Which the Levites would provide the sacrifice of the representation, and they had to provide one for themselves, if you remember, before they could even touch. And that was this touch, that wasn't to look in. Like, they didn't even, you don't even look in. Because no man can handle looking upon the Lord. So, everybody's statements earlier, unbelieving, lack of faith, I think, I can't remember guys now, whatever, like the 3 or 4 different little statements there. Every one of their statements is true. But what they weren't believing is that God is that holy. That they could not just go to him. That they needed to go through the sacrifice in order to get to him. Do you understand? So they were denying Jesus Christ and the promise of God by the act of doing it. Does that make sense? And so in doing so, what were they already? Another key point. Okay, really, they were already dead. Because they already weren't. Now, at the same time, when they seen the ark coming, what did they do? So it would look like if you looked at a lot of things about, certain things about them, you would look at it and say, oh, well, they believed certain things up to a certain point. Does that make sense? But the atonement, if it's not Christ, then what do you got? Nothing. So you can say, oh yeah, that's God. You can recognize, my point is like there's a lot of people say, oh, Lord, Lord, and God, God, and boy, he's God, and this and that, and they can say the words, but until you live it that way, then what is it? You can say that it's Christ and that Christ died for sin, but until it's that way, like, what is it? You can say the words, but believing it, and what they did was an act of unbelief. They went the opposite of the way that they would have been if they would have been believing. Right? Because then there would have been reverence. There would have been honor. There would have been praise. Right? And now the praise part they did have, but where was the reverence? Where was the honor? Where was the respect? Where was any of those things that would be shown? You know, because if you think about it, if you're about to walk into a room with God, yeah, I mean, and wouldn't you be trying to do anything you could, be respectful and honorable and everything else? Right? Do you I mean, like, you're sure like everything's good, right? I mean, like, you'd be trying, right? And we know that even if we did all those things, we still couldn't, right? And we know that in our heart because of the Spirit that the Lord's given us. Does that make sense? And so it's evident that, you know, that wasn't really there with these gentlemen right here. So the Lord strikes them. Now, again, when God ever does anything like this, it's always for somebody else's faith. Yes? Guys, you know, whenever there's a miracle, guess what it's always for? Other people's faith. You know, when there's great destruction, though, you know what it's always for? It's always for people's faith also. Okay? God always works for the salvation. That's all. It's always working for us. Okay? And so here it is nonetheless. Okay, so guys, verse 20. The men of Bethshemesh said then. So then the rest of them are still alive, right? Well, this is what they say. Then who is able to stand before this holy Lord God? So did the point get across, do you think? Yep. Yeah. Because they're saying that now they wouldn't be able to stand before him. Like before, they were like, oh yeah, we could just, you know, and whatever, you know. No, now they're like, whoa, wait a minute. Now there's some reverence here. There's some respect. And they said, so then who should go in here from us? They sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kirjath-jearim, saying, the Philistines have brought back the ark of the Lord. Come down and take it up with you. Then the men of Kirjath-jearim came, and they took the ark of the Lord, and they brought it into the house of Abinadab. Sure. On the hill. And they consecrated, now hear this though, and they consecrated Eleazar, his son, to keep the ark of the Lord. You know, so he was ordained, he was set aside for that purpose. Yes? So in other words, he was not going to be taking care of it until what? So again, you can understand the fear, the reverence that is taking place even in these steps, yes? So it wasn't the ark remained in that line for a long time. It was 20 years. So now we are jumping 2 decades into the future as the story goes on. Samuel then spoke to all of the house of Israel. So 20 years has gone by, and Samuel speaks to all those of Israel. If you return to the Lord with all your hearts, then put away your foreign gods and the Ashtoreths from among you, and prepare your hearts for the Lord. Serve him only, and he will deliver you from the hand of the Philistines. So the children of Israel put away the Baals and the Ashtaroths and served the Lord only. Go back, these same gods. The same gods that comes in right after they take the land and they're told to push out, and they don't. And then immediately they take up these other gods. So these gods have been there through all these different times of the judges, if you remember. And every time there was one of the judges that gets raised up, some gods were from different areas, yes? But depending on the god that they mentioned there in that one, they put away that god, and then what happens is there's peace amongst all the people, there's peace amongst people and God, and you see peace for so much period of time. Then, usually what happened was then there would be the death of one of those judges, and then you would see them fall right back into worshiping other gods. Then you would see the consequences coming in, and then you would see the next judge raised up. So that was like a repetitiveness, yes? And so it's not, so here what you're seeing though is the judge Samuel. Remember, Samuel's one of the only ones that is judge, prophet, and priest. Right? And so here you're actually seeing that of the judge part. So him fulfilling that role. Yes? And Samuel said, gather all Israel to Mizpah, and I will pray to the Lord for you. So they gathered together at Mizpah, drew water, and they poured it out before the Lord. And they fasted that day and said there, we have sinned against the Lord. And Samuel judged the children of Israel at Mizpah. You know what's amazing? Before you can ever get to salvation, you know what you got to see? You got to see, man, I'm a sinner. I'm a sinner, and all I deserve from God is that judgment and that wrath. Before there's ever, man, thank you, Lord, for the Savior, Jesus Christ. Then it's amazing because then all the other things all melt away. And all that matters is that God loved you so much, He gave His Son. That's when you can really be delivered and be saved. Now, when the Philistines heard that the children of Israel had gathered together in Mizpah, the lords of the Philistines went up against Israel. Think they would have learned after the first round of Hebron. But 20 years has gone by, so they must have forgotten. Sorry. Okay. And when the children of Israel heard of it, they were afraid of the Philistines. So the children of Israel said to Samuel, do not cease to cry out to the Lord our God for us, that He may save us from the hand of the Philistines. And Samuel took a suckling lamb, and he offered it as a whole burnt offering to the Lord. Then Samuel cried out to the Lord for Israel, and the Lord answered him. Now Samuel was offering the burnt offering. The Philistines drew near to battle against Israel. But the Lord thundered with a loud thunder upon the Philistines that day. And He so confused them that they were overcome by Israel. And the men of Israel went out of Mizpah and pursued the Philistines and drove them back as far as the road of Beth-kar. Then Samuel took a stone and he set it up between Mizpah and Shen, and he called that place Ebenezer, saying, thus far the Lord has helped us. So Ebenezer, the name, meaning stone of help. So the Philistines were subdued, and they did not come anymore into the territory of Israel. And the hand of the Lord was against the Philistines all the days of Samuel. Then the cities of the Philistines had taken from Israel were restored to Israel from Ekron to Gath. And Israel recovered its territories from the hands of the Philistines. Also, there was peace between Israel and the Amorites. Which, if you don't remember, that's a big deal. And Samuel judged Israel all the days of his life. He went from year to year on a circuit to Bethel, Gilgal, and Mizpah. And he judged Israel in all those places. So he went from place to place to place preaching every year. He would rotate. No cities. But he always returned to Ramah, for his home was there. And there he judged Israel, and there he built an altar to the Lord. Chapter 8. So here we come. Saul. Now it came to pass when Samuel was old that he made his sons judges over Israel. The name of his firstborn was Joel, and the name of his second was Abijah. They were judges in Beersheba, but his sons did not walk in his ways. They turned aside after dishonest gain, took bribes, and perverted justice. Then all the elders of Israel gathered together and came to Samuel at Ramah, and said to him, Look, you are old, and your sons do not walk in your ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the other nations. But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. Interesting point. What displeased Samuel?
They're asking for a king. Who knows the king's God? Like God.
Okay, you're on it, then you're dead right. She said because they're asking for a king when God is their king. They have one. They're just not recognizing him at this time. Yes? Yep. You know, who was it? Oh, Samuel cried out to who on our behalf? To defend us? To fight for us? To go before us and give us victories? And then all of a sudden, that's not their heart. The thing that actually amazes me, though, is you know what Samuel is not amazed by or does not try to, he doesn't actually address it hardly at all, actually, but I mean, he probably did with them. But as far as it being addressed, like that he's displeased with the people, was the report there of his sons. Do you know why that's amazing to me? So there was a similar story to this that just happened with Eli, right, with his sons. You know, Samuel, like when he hears it, like the way that it's addressed here, he like, okay, well, just put it this way. That part of what them bringing him that report, what was more important to him was God. And that's what was amazing to me. It wasn't, oh my gosh, my poor sons. Oh my gosh, you're talking bad about my poor sons. I mean, nowadays, in this snowflake generation, oh my gosh, you call my son white. Well, he is white, right? Like, that's actually, he's part Pacific Islander. But, like, I'm sorry. Okay. But in the snowflake generation, I mean, like, you have all these different ones, and I mean, I have to deal with this all the time. Like, a parent, like, on one hand, you know, their kid can do no evil, but then if anybody does anything or says anything, oh my gosh, it's the end of the world. You know, and you know, and then they create more snowflakes. Whole other thing. But like here, I mean, like it's not even like no, like the whole issue is about the Lord and it's about their relationship with God. That's the only thing that matters to him. The rest of it, you know, like God is what God is, and He's got the issue is whether or not God's going to be God to the people. And that to me is just amazing to me that He wouldn't jump up and, you know, there was nothing. I mean, like he just straight out, and what displeased him was this statement, give us a king to judge us. Yeah? And like I said, I just personally, I found that just amazing. It says, so Samuel prayed to the Lord, and the Lord said to Samuel, heed the voice of the people in all that they say to you, for they have not rejected you, but they rejected me. Give them what they want. Have you ever have anybody tell you, you know what, I don't want to hear you no more. Shut up. You know what God says? Heed them. Give them exactly what they want. You see, where we take offense in it a lot of times is because we think that what they're doing is rejecting us. They're not. What they're really rejecting is him. And until they can see that, there's nothing that you're going to do or say. You can jump, scream, cry, kick, beg. You can do all these different things, and it would not change anything until they see where they're living towards God. Yeah, because they're using you as the blame for it, but that's really not the reality. Right? So turn them over to it, let them have it. Let them have what they're asking for. Now, God is really cool in this thing, guys, by the way, right here. Because God really, I don't know, he's just cool. As it carries on, like, I mean, you would think then that Saul would be the arch-enemy number one, right? And that God never wants it that way for Saul.
And it's not Saul's fault.
And yeah, exactly, it's nor is it Saul's fault. And God just wants to be for Saul. He wants to be for the people. He's God. He loves everybody. He just wants to be loved back. Yeah. I mean, like, it's amazing to me. I'm sorry, I'm jumping like chapters ahead by my statement right there, but it's amazing to me. And nonetheless, so he the voice of the people. He says, "For they have not rejected you, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them, according to all the works which they have done since the day that I have brought them out of Egypt, even to this day, with which they have forsaken me and served other gods. So they are doing so also to you. Now therefore heed their voice. However, you shall solemnly forewarn them, and show them the behavior of the king who will reign over them." So Samuel does. Verse 11 and 10, Samuel told the word to all the people, and he said to them, check verse 11, "This will be the behavior of the king who will reign over you. He will take your sons, and he will appoint them over some of his chariots, over some of his horsemen, and some will run before the chariots. He will appoint captains over thousands and captains over 50s. He will set some to plow and his ground and reap his harvest, and some to make his weapons of war and equipment for his chariots. He will take your daughters to be perfumers, cooks, and bakers, and he will take the best of your fields, your vineyards, your olive groves, give them to the servants. He will take a tenth of your grain and of your vintage, and give it to the officers and the servants. He will take your male servants, your female servants, your finest young men, your donkeys, and he will put them to his work. He will take a tenth of your sheep, you will be his servants. And you will cry out in that day because of your king, whom you have chosen by yourself, and the Lord will not hear you in that day." Nevertheless, the people refused to obey the voice of Samuel. And they said, "No, but we will have a king over us, that we may also be like all the other nations, so that our king may judge us and go out before us and fight our battles."
Really?
Jumping ahead a few decades. Remember Saul was sitting inside the tent? All of his people were down there fighting the fights. Heck, he was scared of me. It's time for the actual presentation before the people. He goes and hides them too, which again, I'm skipping ahead. But yeah, you remember the scripture where he says, "Do not be conformed to this world"? That's what they're trying to do. Yeah, guys, I mean, man, there's a lot of different points that are in here. Just following God's way is always just the best way. It's the best way for everybody. Yeah. We're supposed to, how are we supposed to overcome this world? Yeah? The blood of Christ and the words of our testimony. Yes? And the testimony is really of what? It's our testimony, it's ours. But what is it? Okay, it's of Jesus Christ, but honestly, you can go over all of the wonderful works of God, which, I mean, if you don't have Jesus Christ, then what are all the other works? You know what I'm saying? Like, they are just words, but they become a real testimony to you if you have Jesus Christ. And then you look at all of the words of God, all the promises and all the victories and all of the battles and all of the, like, all of the heroes of faith, everything that they went through and how they overcame and over and over again, right? And there's all these wonderful works that God has done throughout all of time, showing his great love and compassion and desire for the salvation. Yes? And that all came from the blood of the Lamb. Because without him, we never had any of the other, right? But nonetheless, they refused the voice of the pastor. Wanted to go their own way. So Samuel heard all the words of the people, and he repeated them to the hearing of the Lord. So the Lord said to Samuel, heed their voice and make them a king. And Samuel said to the men of Israel, every man go to his own city. And so they did. So there was a man of Benjamin whose name was Kish, the son of Abiel, the son of Zerah, the son of Becheroth, the son of, he was a Benjamite, and he was powerful. He had a choice, a handsome son, whose name was Saul. There was none that were more handsome than him in all of Israel. And his shoulders upward, he was taller than any of the other people. So he was tall. Have you ever heard head and shoulders above the rest? He was head and shoulders above the rest. He was tall and handsome. Yeah? And I guess the one good thing about him is if you're walking in a crowd, everybody would be able to see who the king was, right? Now, some of you guys are pretty short. Jenny.
Shut up.
So it's going to take a whole lot to get up head and shoulders. I love you.
I sure do.
Now the donkeys of Kish, Saul's father, were lost. So Kish said to his son Saul, take one of the servants with you, and you arise and you go and you look for the donkeys. So he passed through the mountains. Now that through the land, I'm just going to kind of, he ended up traveling, looking for these donkeys. Okay? When they come to the land of Zuph, Saul says to the servant, come, let us return, lest the father cease caring about the donkeys and he becomes worried about us. That's in verse 5. So then the servant says, look now, there is in this city a man of God, and he is an honorable man. All that he says surely comes to pass. So let us go there. Perhaps he can show us the way that we should go. The prophetic statements of the servant. Every word he said is true. If you'll just lift up your eyes and look, in this city there is a man who has God, and God is with him. Yes? He is honorable. Yes? Everything he says will come to pass. This is also prophetic towards Saul. Saul does not know yet that he's about to be the king, but everything that Samuel has said that the king will be is who Saul will be. And the servant even says, hey, if we go to him, it's all going to come to pass exactly like how he has said. Let us go there. Perhaps he can show us the way that we should go. Saul said as the servant, but look, if we go, what would we bring them in? So, it was customary any time that you went to anybody's house. It'd be customary to bring something as far as a gift. Anytime you went to a man of God, then you would bring him even more. Okay? So basically they said, man, how can we do this because we don't even have a present? And then the servant ends up looking and he says, look, you know what? Here I have 1/4 of a shekel of silver. I'll give that to the man of God so that he will tell us our way. I'm sorry. Okay, there we go. Verse 9. Formerly in Israel, when a man went to inquire of God, he spoke thus, come, let us go to the seer. For he is called, now we call a seer a prophet. Okay? So at that time, the same terminology, but it was a seer. Okay? So then Saul says to his servant, well, come, let us go. So they come to the city where the man of God was. We went up on the hill of the city. There was a young woman going out to draw water. They asked if the seer was here. And then she says, yes. There he is, just ahead of you. Hurry now, for today he came to this city, because there is a sacrifice of the people today in the high place. As soon as you come into the city, you will surely find him before he goes up onto the high place to eat. For the people will not eat until he comes, because he must bless the sacrifice. Afterwards, those who are invited will eat. Now therefore go up, for about this time you will find him. So they ran up to the city. Now the Lord had told Samuel that Saul was coming. So he told him this the day before. And the Lord said that tomorrow, the time will come, there will be a certain man from the land of Benjamin. You will anoint him commander over my people of Israel. He will save my people from the hand of the Philistines, for I have looked upon my people, because of their cry has come to me. So Samuel saw Saul, and he said to him, there he is, the man whom I spoke to you, the one that you shall reign, the one who shall reign over my people. Then Saul drew near to Samuel in the gate, and he says, please tell me where the seer's house is. And Samuel said to him, I am the seer. Verse 19. Go up before me to the high place, for you shall eat with me today, and tomorrow you will go, and you will tell, and will tell you all that is in your heart. But as for your donkeys, they were lost 3 days ago. But don't not be anxious about them, for they've already been found. And on whom is all the desire of Israel? Is it not on you and on your father's house? So then Saul goes into this whole entire thing about that he's a Benjamite. He's of the smallest of the tribes of Israel, which the Benjamites were. And then his family was also the smallest of all the families of the tribes of the Benjamites. So he's making this case of why he could not be this one that the favor has been found on. Now Samuel took Saul and the servant and brought him into the hall, set him in the place of honor among all those who were invited. There was about 30 people. Samuel said to the cook, bring forth the portion which I gave you, of which I said to you, set it apart. So the cook took it, the thigh with its upper part, and set it before Saul. And Samuel said, here it is. What was kept back, it was set apart for you. Eat, for until this time it has been kept for you, since I said I invited the people. So Saul ate with Samuel that day. So they woke up early that morning around dawn. Samuel called to Saul on top of the house, saying, get up, that I may send you on your way. Saul arose, both of them went outside, he and Samuel. When they were going down outside the outskirts of the city, Samuel said to Saul, tell the servant to go on ahead, but you stand here a while, that I may announce to you the word of God. Samuel took the flask of oil and poured it on his head. And he kissed him, and he said, it is not because the Lord has anointed you commander, or is it not? I'm sorry. Because the Lord has anointed you commander over his inheritance. When you have departed from me today, you will find 2 men by Rachel's tomb in the territory of Benjamin. They will say to you, the donkeys which you have been looking for have been found. And now your father has ceased caring about the donkeys and is worrying about you. And what shall I do about my son? Then you shall go on forward from there and come to the terebinth tree of Tamar. There the 3 men going to God at Bethel will meet you. One carrying 3 young goats, another carrying 3 loaves of bread, and another carrying a skin of wine. And they will greet you and give you 2 loaves of bread, and you shall receive from their hands. After that, you shall come to the hill of God, where the Philistine garrison is. And it will happen, when you have come to that city, that you will meet a group of prophets coming down from the high place with stringed instruments, tambourine, flutes, and harps. And they will be prophesying. And the Spirit of the Lord will come upon you, and you will prophesy with them and be turned into another man. And let it be, when these signs come to you, that you do as the occasion demands, for God is with you. You shall go down before me to Gilgal, and surely I will come down to you and offer burnt offerings and make sacrifices of peace offerings. 7 days you shall wait till I come to you and show you what you should do. I want to pause real quick. How much is God for this dude? Yeah? I mean, guys, it kind of reminds me of somebody else. wanting to run from God, not really wanting to, be about Him, and then, God just kind of does everything to save you. Moves all these weird things in your life so you come across the prophet of God, to hear the words of God. That reminds me of like me and you. Lost donkeys. You're still looking for your donkey. Never mind. I better not go there on the camera. All right. No, that's not. There was something though. I'm going back up a little bit. In verse, I believe it's still in verse 1 of chapter 10. Yes, it is. Verse 1 of chapter 10. He took the flask of oil, he pours it on his head. You know the representation of that, yes? The anointing of the Holy Spirit. He kissed him. You know the representation of that? The holy kiss of unity and love that should be forever. Yeah? That's what it's supposed to represent. And then he says, is it not because the Lord has anointed you commander? That part's not that confusing. He's just saying this is why this is happening, right? The next few words is another piece that I find to be very, very big. He's anointed you commander over his inheritance. We've heard inheritance mentioned a whole lot throughout the scripture up to this point, yes? What is his inheritance? You got it? Say it.
Us.
Us.
Yeah, I mean.
It's us. See, we always looked at it like in all these different times, in the different people. Isn't that even how they would look at it? They looked at the land, they looked at these territories, they looked at these certain things as inheritances. Right? And they've even been kind of living that up to this point, right? You see that off and on with them, right? And even fighting, battling over different towns because it was all about like this terrain or whatever else that they thought was going to give them some sort of power and make them closer to God. But what was God always about? The people, their souls, and being saved. It wasn't about the land and the territories or any of those things. And the inheritance, even here, that is identified as God's inheritance is the souls of the believers of His church. Now that's me and you.
Yeah.
Yeah? I find that beautiful. I find it beautiful that over and over again he lists out every single thing here for Saul. And that it was God who's going to do. God will do. God is for you. God is for you. God is for you. This becomes a big, big theme with Saul because it is the one thing Saul could really never really believe is that God was working for him. Which is Saul's demise. That's where Saul ends up losing. Okay? Because he could never just really believe that God was really for him and for him the whole entire time. Okay? However, again, from this very, very beginning, I don't know, like it's beautiful to me how God still was. Even though Saul could never believe, God really was. Verse 9. So it was when he had turned his back to go from Saul that God gave him another heart. And all those signs came to pass that day. When they came there to that hill, there was a group of prophets, and in him the Spirit of God came upon him to prophesy among them. And it happened, when all who knew him formerly saw that he indeed prophesied among the prophets, that the people said to one another, what is this that has come up upon the son of Kish? Is Saul also among the prophets? Then a man from there answered and said, but who is their father? Therefore it became a proverb. Is Saul also among the prophets? And when he had finished prophesying, he went to the high place. And Saul's uncle said to him and his servants, where did you go? And he said, to look for the donkeys. When we saw that there were nowhere to be found, we went to Samuel. And Saul's uncle said, well then tell me, please, what Samuel said to you. So Saul said to his uncle, he told us plainly that the donkeys had been found. But about the matter of the kingdom, he did not tell him what Samuel had said. Then Samuel called people together to the Lord at Mizpah, and said to the children of Israel, thus says the Lord God of Israel, I brought up Israel out of Egypt and delivered you in the hand of the Egyptians, and from the hand of the kingdoms, from those who oppressed you. But you have again rejected your God, who himself saved you from all the adversities and tribulations. And you have said to him, no one set a king over us. Now therefore present yourselves before the Lord by your tribes and by your clans. And then Samuel had caused all the tribes of Israel to come near. Contact's messing with me, I apologize. Let me just say. The tribe of Benjamin was chosen. When he had caused the tribe of Benjamin to come near to the families, the family of Matri was chosen, and Saul, the son of Kish, was chosen. And when they sought him, he could not be found. Therefore they inquired of the Lord further, Has the man come here yet? And the Lord answered, There he is, hidden amongst all the equipment, farming equipment. So they ran and they brought him from there. You understand what that means, right? So he's been ordained as king, right? He goes and he hides, and you know the equipment, right? When they say equipment, like what kind of equipment do you think that they had? You know, it wasn't like big gigantic tractors and things like that, right? There's a wagon, pitchfork. Like it wasn't a whole lot, you know what I mean? It's like he's hiding, and he's hiding good enough that none of the people can find him. He's probably hiding under or in something. And the dude's head and shoulders above the rest, so he had to find a pretty good place. So then God identifies where he's at and says he's right over there hiding. But he still wouldn't come. So they had to take him and get him and bring him. Yeah, he was high. I mean, like, he was like, yeah. So he was taller than any of the people from his shoulders upward. And Samuel says to all people, Do you see him, whom the Lord has chosen? That there is no one like him among all the people. So all the people shouted, they said, Long live the king! And Samuel explained to the people the behavior of royalty, and he wrote it in the book, and he laid it up before the Lord. And Samuel sent all people away, every man to his house. And Saul also went home to give. And valiant men went with him, whose hearts God had touched. But some rebels said, How can this man save us? So they despised him, and they brought him no presents. But he held his peace. So even Saul, knowing that was their heart, he didn't say anything about it. All right, guys. So we're going to have to end it tonight. We're really low on time. We got about 2 minutes, and can't push on a whole lot. So I guess at this point, guys, if nothing else, we got the king, the first king. We got him ordained and presented to the people. About the strangest way, but probably one's ever been done. Again, guys, and God, he's always for the salvation of others and for the souls. And what he considers his own inheritance is all of us. Yes? That's a lot of value that he's placing on us. There's also a lot of value that he's placing on those who have yet to be. Yeah? Those are his inheritance. Yeah? He does take them very, very, very serious. He cares for them very, very, very greatly. Yeah? It's done. I'll start talking and then we'll be here for a lot longer. So I love you guys, man. The Lord loves us, man. Always remember, man, the Lord does love us, man. He is for us. And if you believe on him, and you're a part of his body here, and then, God's for you. That's the way that it is. Exhortation, warning, don't live contrary to that. I don't care what you have to go through, what's going on. I want to commend Jack right here for as big of a turd as he can be. And he knows the Lord's saying. And he's had to go through a lot in a short period of time. Physical health, lost a brother who at one point was very, very close, at one point was very, very far away. And then the Lord seemed fit that before his end to make him close, not only to Jack again, but also to the Lord. Yeah, which is no better thing. But there's a lot of different things that that he's had to go through. You know what? I've never heard him complain in that sense. Like he's complaining about the pain and those things like that. But I mean, you know, again, he's still Jack. Never complaining. I never heard him complain against the Lord. He's still here. He's here for the services. He's here tonight even. Yeah. And, you know, sometimes it takes a little kick to get him moving, but that's all right. As soon as we figure out how to use that shocker thing, you know, we'll just start going that. If you don't know, like, he has to wear a exterior defibrillator. So that if anything goes erratic in his heart, it will do the shocking. Me and April's been joking that if he gives us a hard time, we got to figure out how to just push a button. And get
a shot.
Yeah, instead of no, but I mean, you know, guys, you know, we all go through a lot. You know, guys, you know, every single one of us, you know, guys, if I start going down through the stories, we've all had to walk through fires at different times. Some of those fires we never wanted, never seen them coming, and we ended up in them. Some of them we created ourselves. There's been all different kinds of different things that we've had to at different times. But you know what? God is still God. And He still loves us. He's for us, man. We're going to keep on marching on. We're going to preach the gospel. We're going to increase that inheritance for Him. Because He is our Lord. He is our God. He has left us. Yeah? You know, and so yeah, guys, as this moves along, here shortly, probably next week, we will have the Saul's journey really start to take off, and David coming on the scene. Okay? David, the youngest ordained king ever. And he didn't even, I mean, God already seen him as king, but anyways, he ends up being the servant of the king, as he was the king. And he loved Saul. And wanted Saul to be at peace. I wanted Saul to be confident in God's love for Saul. Which was just, again, just amazing, the heart of one that just loves God. Yeah, beautiful things that you get to see in there. And so anyways, guys, it'll be a lot of fun. If it's all right with you guys, I don't know. There might be a little part, I don't know. Do you guys want to walk through every single happening, or do you guys want me to kind of highlight some of the major things? Like, how do you guys? Because there's like, you know, if you go to Samuel, just because you don't know, Samuel and David. Samuel 2, right? Then it goes on into Kings, right? Next one after that. Because I think it goes, is it in Chronicles then? As it did there, I mean, all of Chronicles, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, that's all like, then we're not even into the Psalms. Right? It goes, right? I mean, like, you know, it's a lot of content, guys. Historically wise, this is a big chunk right here, okay? As far as like all the different stories that are in the Bible, you know, there's tons of other ones that we've already read, obviously, before, and tons of them that come after this. But as far as just a chunk of history, this is very, very big. So how much of it, I guess, what I'm asking is, how much of it do you guys want? You guys want all of it?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, we'll keep on walking through. Okay. I just want to make sure, because like sometimes I don't know, you know, I want to make sure that huh? Yeah. Okay. Every person. Now, Katie, one thing to be aware of, you know, at this time here, you see a big drop off in the length of life for individuals by this point. Okay, so by this point, you know, like the 1,000-year-olds, you know, things like that, you're not going to see that. Okay, at this point. Nonetheless, but historically wise, the happenings that all take place within the life of Saul, which Samuel, right? Life of Saul, and then also into the life of David. I mean, man, it's just, it's massive. It really is. But man, the beautiful truths and the beautiful revelations that lie throughout all in there. Yeah. Anyways, guys, I love you. Have a wonderful, wonderful night. Can we go forth praying and actually praying?